Ozzy Osbourne is gone, and suddenly the family drama everybody thought was over is louder than ever. A quiet daughter steps into the crowd for the first time in years. The internet swears she's ready to spill, and old stories about Sharon start trending like they're brand new. Here's the uncomfortable question fans keep asking. Did a grieving family finally lose its filter? Or did we all ignore the red flags for decades because the show was too good? Tonight, we're unpacking what really happened after Ozzy's last goodbye, the sibling distance, the reality TV fallout, and the moments that made even hardcore metal fans say, wait, who was pulling the strings? Some of this is on record, some is speculation. I'll tell you which is which. But if you think you know the Osbournes, this might change how you see them forever. But that wasn't the whole story. Ozzy's final chapter was short, heavy, and public. He passed at 76 with the kind of send-off only a legend gets. Streets packed, heads bowed, fans blasting Sabbath like a prayer. The moment that stuck out. Aimee, yes, the sister you almost never see, standing beside Sharon and Kelly. No interviews, no quotes, just presence. And that silence is what set the internet on fire. People started connecting dots. The reclusive daughter finally appears. Jack's recent comment about not being close to her resurfaces. Old clips of Sharon's fiercest moments flood feeds. Was this unity or a truce for one day only? Here's the hook. Grief doesn't erase a brand. And the Osbournes were a brand long before they were a storyline. So when the cameras found them again, the question wasn't, are they okay? It was who's in control now? And what happened next would split the audience in two. If you grew up on the MTV era, you remember chaos in a Beverly Hills mansion. Bleeped out yelling, dogs everywhere, Ozzy shuffling through a kitchen like a sleepwalker. You remember Kelly, you remember Jack, but the eldest daughter? Almost never on screen. That was Amy's choice. At 16, she walked away from the cameras, moved out, and kept her life off reality TV. Privacy wasn't a phase for her. It was a boundary. Here's why that matters now. Distance has a cost. Years later, Jack says he and Aimee aren't close. Fans draw their own maps. If you reject the show, do you reject the family that said yes to it? Or were you protecting your sanity while the rest of the house doubled down on the spotlight? Amy's funeral appearance reignited the debate. To some, it looked like empathy. To others, it looked like a quiet challenge. I'm here for Dad, not for the franchise. But the franchise doesn't sleep. Sharon Osbourne isn't just a TV host. She's a strategist. The woman built Ozzfest out of thin air and kept Ozzy's career in orbit when most bands from his era flamed out. That's the resume. The reputation is sharper, confrontational, theatrical, and absolutely willing to turn real life into leverage. The case study everyone cites is Ozzfest 2005. The infamous Iron Maiden debacle. Eggs flying, sound cutting, Sharon storming a stage with the kind of fury that sells headlines. For fans, that night crystallized a fear. If you cross Sharon, she'll make sure the audience sees you lose. And for Ozzy, it sent a message too. Management wasn't just contracts and schedules. It was war. If you're Aimee, watching from a distance, what do you learn? The family brand is a battering ram. It can protect you, it can crush you, and it rarely makes room for quiet people. But business wasn't the only battlefield. Long before the reality show, there was another fight. Who gets credit, who gets paid, and who gets erased? Old bandmates and producers have spent years saying Sharon pushed them out, first from the money, then from the history books. The low point, according to the people who played on those records, a reissue that swapped their original bass and drum tracks with new ones, as if the past could be dubbed over and sold back to fans with a shiny sticker. The legal side ended in dismissals and partial walkbacks. Later editions restored the original parts, but the damage was done. To a lot of people in the industry, the Osbourne Machine looked ruthless. To Sharon, it looked like survival. To fans, it looked like a reminder. In this family, the narrative can be edited in post, which is exactly why the present-day speculation hits so hard. If you can rewrite albums, can you rewrite a legacy? And that leads to the stories that aged badly. There's the kind of messy that stays inside a home, and there's the kind that goes viral. The assistant in a fire story is the latter. Sharon told it like a wild party anecdote. House in flames, orders shouted, priorities twisted into a joke. The audience laughed until they didn't. Years later, she said it was exaggerated for TV. Too late. The clip lives forever, and every time the family is under a microscope, that moment reappears like a ghost. Here's why viewers care about that story now. Because it sounds like power testing empathy, like the brand outranking the human being in front of you. True, false, embellished, doesn't matter on the internet. What matters is vibe, and the vibe of that story is cold. So when people ask why Aimee stayed quiet for so long, one answer is obvious. Silence is safer when everything you say can be diced into a meme. Still, the present has a way of forcing choices. Sharon's 2021 exit from daytime TV after an on-air meltdown and a wave of allegations didn't just bruise her resume, it hardened public opinion. She denied the ugliest claims against her, but the impression stuck. Tough manager, tougher mouth, brittle when challenged. Then came the war headlines and the posts, clips, and hot takes that turned her into a political lightning rod. She took a side, loudly, often. And the more she posted, the more people asked whether Ozzy's name was being attached to positions he didn't or couldn't explain himself. If you're Aimee, your worst nightmare is watching your father's legacy get dragged into culture war content. If you're Sharon, your argument is simpler. You've always protected him, always spoken when he couldn't. And that's what love looks like in public. Those two truths cannot live in the same room without a fight, which brings us to the rumor mill. Right now, commentary channels swear Aimee is ready to expose her mother, claiming Sharon exploited Ozzy's illness, filtered who saw him, and even pushed political statements as if they were his. The views are huge, the headlines are spicy, but here's the catch. The receipts you'd expect from a mainstream outlet aren't there. No formal statement from Aimee laying out the case, no published texts or emails, just a wave of posts, theories, and a lot of people connecting old controversies to today's grief. That doesn't mean the feelings aren't real. It means we need to separate heat from light. We know Aimee values privacy. We know Jack says they're not close. We know Sharon has a history of making the brand the story. From there, speculation writes itself. But until Aimee puts her name on an allegation, here's the fairest reading. A private daughter mourning a public father while the internet tries to draft her into its narrative war. And yet, there's one more layer nobody wants to talk about. The Osbournes taught a generation that fame could be a family business. It paid. It also broke things. Ozzy's health struggles turned into story beats. Fights became punchlines. And the manager-mom line stayed blurry for 40 years, which is how you end up with two equally believable sentences. Sharon saved his career, and Sharon steamrolled everyone. Aimee's path, the one without cameras, isn't dramatic. That's the point. She didn't flip a table. She didn't sell a tell-all. She just moved out at 16 and kept moving. So when she stood beside her mother at the funeral, it was probably the truest thing she could do. Show up for her dad without feeding the machine. Will she speak? Maybe. If she does, it'll be measured and careful, not an internet victory lap. Until then, we're left with a harder story than villain versus angel. It's the story of a family that turned a legend into a product, then tried to grieve in public without letting the product take over. And that tension is not going away. Ozzy's gone, but the brand he helped create is still moving. Aimee's quiet presence set off a loud argument. Was Sharon protecting a legacy, or managing a man who could no longer say no? The answer depends on which clip you watched first, and whether you think love in that house looked like boundaries or defense. Here's what's on record. Decades of ruthless business moves, unforgettable TV, and a family that made millions by letting us in. Here's what isn't. A signed, sealed claim from Aimee that her mother exploited Ozzy. If that ever drops, then we're in a new chapter. Until then, the most honest thing we can say is this. The Osbournes were pioneers of the parasocial era. They taught us to feel like we knew them. Now, for once, they don't owe us a tidy ending. If you want the truth, watch who speaks and who doesn't.